Hello, everyone. We're really pleased to be here, and I'm really honored to sit down with Ken and have this conversation in front of all of you. Our attempt will be to be as consistent with the tone of what has been discussed thus far, and I think we'll have a couple of points to make. First, on Ken's background and much of what in his experience has led him to where he is and has really impacted his activities. But then I think we'll go into a few other things that will really tie back into some of the conversation, because you might find that the vintage crowd like us, we have some different views that maybe not so much different, but some additional insights that might also be worth considering. But first, Ken, you probably have the longest running career of any African American in technology, but more importantly, just a storied career as a trusted advisor, technical professional, someone who served on boards and helped lead and help shape a number of careers and businesses. Love to hear your thoughts on things in your life and career that have really helped give you the skill sets to be the real asset to the industry and the community as well that you have been.
Well, I'm actually committed to writing a book. People have been trying to convince me to do that. I'm going to write a book, and it's been forced me to think about my background and my career and how I got here. I grew up in a small town in Illinois, 15,000 people, went to a segregated grade school and integrated high school. One of the things I remember is the first day of high school, I'd never been in classrooms with white kids, and I only had interacted with white kids in sports. I played against them, never been on a team with them. And the first day, there was a bulletin board, and it said, student council. And I said, I'm going to run. And I ran, and I won. I was the first black person to be on the student council of my hometown. I have no idea why I believed I could win, except I just didn't believe I couldn't. And so somehow, the way I was raised, as I said, some of you heard me say yesterday, I just never believed that white people's ice water was colder than black people's ice water. And for me, whether it was in the classroom or playing basketball or football or baseball, I thought I could compete. And I was driven to compete and never give anybody any reason to think they were smarter or better than I was. So that drive, it's kind of the fundamentals. And then I was sort of a practical kid. So like when I was in high school, I knew I wanted to go to college. And my parents never got out of high school. It wasn't because my parents pushed me. I just was going to college because that's what you did if you were a reasonably good student. And so I took two classes because, again, the way I was thinking. I took German because when I was growing up, I knew I was going to be in science-oriented stuff, and I wanted to be able to read German research papers. And then I took typing because I wanted to be able to type my term papers. So I went to Ohio State, and I needed money, and there was an ad in the student newspaper for a key punch operator who could type. I applied. I didn't know what a key punch was, and got the job, and then became a computer operator, and the rest is history, So that's kind of like fortuitous, I don't know, but it worked out.
Can I ask one question along the lines of some of the things that have happened? Reading your bio, there was a discussion of the fact that when you were in Korea, there was I guess in the early 70s,
Right.
There was a race riot or a potential race riot on the military base. And you played the instrumental, or certainly an instrumental, but let's say the instrumental role in calming things down and keeping order. How did that happen? Did someone say to you, Ken, you're the guy, can you calm the brothers down? Or did you just decide that, look, I think I can help out here? I mean, because I'm sure whatever was upsetting everyone could have just as easily, and probably did, upset you as well. So you could have just as easily been on the other side, charging up the troops to riot, and yet you calmed it down. How did that happen?
Well, I was an officer, so there were three of us,
All right.
black officers,
Okay.
on the base. So the base commander looked around and says, "Who's going to help here?" He said, "You, Captain Coleman." And then you just do what you have to do. I remember getting in front of the crowd. The crowd, they were walking down the street, and I just got around and put my hand up and started talking to them, trying to understand the issues, and then commit to we're going to solve them. But it was a little scary time in my career.
So in the boardrooms, when you see issues that could easily be problems for a company down the road, I would imagine that people look to you in many ways to help them see around corners, hopefully not just on race issues, but on issues relating to business, society, anything that can affect the company. How does you feel your role, your position, your responsibilities as a director, as an advisor, how does that all come together?
Well, I think the most important thing a good board member does is provide perspective and ask good questions. You know, one thing that people laugh about and or complain about me, if you come to me with an issue, you'll leave with more questions that you need to answer than answers, because there's only one CEO in the company, one management team. I'm not inside the company every day, but you can provide perspective, and then if management team can't answer those questions better than you got another problem. You got the wrong management team, and so that's what I do. I try to bring perspective to the boardroom. The good news is I've made every mistake and seen so much stuff, and I'm involved in enough stuff today that I have pretty good perspective, and I can say, you know, this is. Have you thought about this way? Did you think about it that way? But to do this work, to be an advisor or a board member, the thing you have to come to grips with, you're no longer in charge. So you have to be comfortable when somebody ignores your advice. Okay, now I'm okay with that as long as I think they're hearing my advice. I'm comfortable if you're not hearing it, but then if you choose to make another decision, fine. And it's sometimes very frustrating because you've seen this movie 10 times before, and you know the guy's going to run off a cliff. You just know it, okay? One of the issues is, it's fascinating. I talked to a CEO, and one thing I always say, tell me about your team. Okay, and they'll go through the team. I says, why is that guy still working for you? Given what you just said, he is failing, okay? And people will give you 19,000 reasons why not to deal with that problem. And then the guy will come to you 6 or 9 months later and says, you know, I wish I had gotten rid of that person. But, you know, on the other hand, one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made in my career, when I was running a company, I got seduced into believing that making my board members investors were more important than doing what I was taught right to run the business. And I made a couple mistakes. And so at the end of the day, if you're an entrepreneur or you're the CEO, if you're going to get fired for making decisions that you're committed to. You know, it's like golf. If you all play golf, you play golf and you putt. This was a tough thing. And if you putt, and if I tell you to get the holes there, but to get it there, you got to hit it there, and you can't see that, it is impossible for you to hit it there with conviction. And that's true in running a company. If you just can't see it, no matter what I say, it is virtually impossible for you to be committed to a path of action successfully.
Yeah, great. Now, we heard an interesting exchange a few minutes ago, and a number of things that were said that I found very interesting. Michael mentioned, for example, that the business that he joined was one that he didn't necessarily believe in at first, or maybe didn't understand. I don't want to mischaracterize what you said, but he couldn't see the path to where that was going to be a successful business. As you look at startup businesses, and people bring business plans, and you look at companies maybe that are even trying to build and grow and raise capital, what's more important to you? Is it the person or the product, and I know I'm simplifying it, but you have to, obviously you have to believe it's going to work, even though it could be completely wrong, because things, I'm sure you've been surprised. But how important, how much weight do you place on the people and whether you feel good about them versus the business plan that they present you and the model that they present?
Well, let me give you the Andreessen Horowitz answer to that. That's the most relevant, even though I have a personal view that's pretty similar to that. And we'll never invest in an idea, no matter how good it is, we don't believe in the CEO. Because there's a high probability that idea will have to be changed along the way. And so number one, you're betting on people. Now, I'm not going to invest in a dumb idea, hopefully, but it starts and ends with an entrepreneur you can believe in, who has the cycles and the smarts and the brilliance and the self-awareness to pull this off. I advise Pinterest. When I leave here today, I'm going to Pinterest and spend the afternoon at Pinterest. And that's an example where it's a young guy, 32 years old. If he's one of the guys that David Drummond was mentioning yesterday, because he was not an engineer, he's a designer. And Google would not invest in him, okay? And obviously, it's a $3 billion valuation. I got involved at $1 billion, so it's a pretty nice deal. It's $11 billion a day. And, but you invest in this guy almost no matter what his idea was. Because you can tell how smart he is, how strategic he is, and how self-aware he is. And because he's so self-aware, he listens and he will adapt and adjust. One thing on your other argument, by the way, that you guys were having, I find it a couple points I would say. One is he was from Iowa. He got in his car and drove out here and with nothing. Guys do that. They just do that because the one thing is different here is the ecosystem is just different than anywhere I've been exposed to in Chicago, or I went to Ohio State. I've been trying to help entrepreneurship in Columbus, Ohio, and it's just different. When I started a company, the law firms were fighting over me, including Wilson Sonsini, on the come. I didn't have to pay a lawyer. Somebody loaned me space. And there are things you can do here that is hard to duplicate other places. It just is. On the other hand, this recent article on me on USA Today, I was amazed by the number of young black people who were trying to do something in this area from around the country who it's clear to me they needed a voice. Because somebody's sitting in Chicago or Atlanta or Houston or wherever they were pinging me, and they were just saying, "Can I talk to you for 5 minutes for advice?" And so one of the things I think can make a difference is the black media. I think I've been telling the black media, anybody will listen, that you're missing a point. There's a message you can, rather than just showing the basketball players, or the movie stars, you might start showing some people in technology on what's possible. And so I think that's one source of inspiration, because these young people do need a voice, and I don't think they have a voice. And I was quite surprised.
That's critical. One other thing that you mentioned now, referring to the earlier conversation, I think it was mentioned that computer science is where everyone needs to, or many people need to focus their resources. And I do agree with that. I think you mentioned, though, this one example that kind of speaks to a counterpoint that I would make. The person at Pinterest did not have that background. And from what I've seen, everything that is disruptive, everything that is transformational in our economy is really the result of someone's awareness of the drivers of whatever facet of life they're trying to change. And it often requires I think, in addition to obviously the technical skills, but in many cases you bring other skill sets that can leverage someone else's expertise in the specific technology to enable you to succeed. And because I look at the counterpoint when I'm in finance and investment banking, one thing that we've seen over the last 15 years is everyone starting a new hedge fund. And what ends up happening is most of the people that start their hedge funds, they were trained at 2 or 3 of the same firms, employ the exact same strategies. You look at their portfolios, they look the same, so therefore they can't outperform anyone else. And when they make a mistake, they make the same mistake. And it's so important to have people come from, I think, different perspectives. And in the technology sense, my view is, the ideas come from anywhere. Now, you may have to be here to implement. You may have to really have having the computer science, you're going to get a job and you're going to be in demand. But I would expect, and I think I'm not saying you weren't saying this, that there are ideas from all reaches of life that, with the right person, as you point out, can make it happen. What do you?
Well, so
tell me I'm totally out the lunch, too.
No. I think there are a lot of myths in this space, and one myth is you have to be a technologist to be in technology. That's just not true. I can walk through this valley, and I can show you examples, including CEOs, founders. That's just not true. There are many skills required. Ben Silverman at Pinterest is a designer. He does not have an engineering degree. At Sama, our data scientists are mathematicians and statisticians. They're not computer scientists. And so there are multiple ways into this opportunity. Now, do I want more computer scientists? Of course I do. But we shouldn't say that's the only thing you can be. David Drummond probably is worth more money than any black person I know, at least for sure, from Google. He took them public, and he's an attorney, and a very important person, not only at Google, but in the industry. And so I think you have to be careful about these broad, there's only way to victory statements, because I think that's just not true. And my CEO over here, the company I'm chairman of, Sama, one of the things that the company is incredibly strong technically, and one of the things we've had to learn as a company is all the other muscles besides technical muscles you need to create a successful enterprise. And there are a lot of other muscles other than technical. Now, you can't work in a technology company and not understand technology or how technology is used, but you don't have to be a technologist to be very successful in the technology industry.
That's great. Now, jumping around a bit, one of the things, you've alluded to this earlier about people getting in their car, going out to Silicon Valley. Around the country, there are a lot of young people at a generation where they are entering careers, they're maybe even doing pretty well in their careers, and then there's the question of they have to make a decision. And, I have a child who's thinking about that, and Eric Moore has been very helpful in advising him. And when you think, okay, you're making money, and of course we're not going to let you completely fall, but the standard of life that you, and the quality of lifestyle that you have right now is going to have to be sacrificed completely while you're working. And if you fail, that's fine. You'll have learned a lot, and you can try again or go to another plan B. But how do you advise people when, I'm sure that all these people that ask you, how do you look at it? Do you tell them, hey, you're not serious if you haven't cashed in the chips? Or because just because you have bravado doesn't mean you have good judgment.
Well, you have to have to me, to really start a company, you have to be either naive or crazy, a little bit crazy, because it's really hard. There's nothing easy about building a company. So I just tell people, look, just know, beware. There's nothing easy about this. It's, and the hardest thing to manage in technology, to get right, and you don't control it, is timing. If you're too early, you're too early, and if you're too late, you're too late. And so you can be brilliant with a brilliant idea, but if you're 6 months late, you just might be screwed. Or if you're early, the company that Ben Horowitz and Mark Andreessen started was initially called Loud Cloud, ended up being Opsware. But Loud Cloud was first cloud computing. It was just a decade too early. And they had to trash.
Way too smart.
They're way too smart, right. And so, I can't tell somebody when they should start a company and should they work longer in a bigger company first. It's a very personal decision. But just know, when you make that decision, you're jumping into the water with no life preserver, and it's really hard. And the hardest thing I ever did, is raise money. Okay? And people come to you about raising. I say, man, it is really hard. And don't believe anything on raising money until the check's in the bank. Okay? Because you will be very, very disappointed. And that has nothing to do with color, by the way. It is just, it's just hard. And you just need to be prepared for a very hard deal to go raise money. But on the other hand, there's nothing like building a product from something in your head, somebody paying you real money for that. And you said, wow, I always remember my first order. I remember my first $1 million deal. I mean, there's nothing like it no matter what else you've done. There's nothing like starting something and build something. But you just you gotta be a little bit crazy.
We're going to jump to 5 minutes of Q&A. I'd like to ask one other small question and give you hopefully a fairly direct answer on this one. But all right, so last week it was mentioned that there was this gender bias case against Kleiner Perkins, and the result, the end judgment, was essentially that the plaintiff didn't meet the burden of proof to show or demonstrate that there was in fact a pattern or systemic gender bias. However, we all know that the numbers in terms of representation of women or African Americans or other minority groups indicates that there's something going on. It's less than an ideal world. Now, as we say, it may not be by design, but it's probably not by accident. And not by accident being that people tend to hire who they feel most comfortable with. So for the African American entrepreneurs here and elsewhere, if they happen not to have the direct personal relationship with someone who's starting a business, how do they break in? I mean, do they come here and just hang out at the Starbucks and Palo Alto? What do you do?
So I'm gonna answer a broader question, if you don't mind, because I've thought about this a lot. This is one man's view of the situation. It's just my view and my experience here. The first thing, the question is, well, why hasn't this been addressed before? My theory first is the East Coast press, which managed the most in America, gave this place a pass on diversity because we weren't important enough. So that's the first thing. So it was a pass. If we'd been if this valley was in New York, it would have been a lot more hell raised earlier, okay? So that's one. Two is there's a myth that technology is meritocracy, and if you're smart, everything works well, okay? With that, and forgot the issue that all companies, all industries, all decisions that matter are half subjective. That's the second point. The third point is because of the success and large number of Asians and East Indians, there was this belief that we were diverse. And so since they were in, anybody else could get in that wanted to get in. And we just forgot about women and blacks and Hispanics and Native Americans, just kind of like I was at a board meeting, one company says, tell me about your diversity program. I'm a board member now, and it says, we're diverse, and they gave me these numbers. And I said, how many black people you got? Oh, 10. You know, you just had forgotten about it. So the last thing is the thing that Jesse Jackson did was put the numbers out there, and numbers don't lie, and people have our companies here have nowhere to hide. Now, why do we end up that way? You know, and then it's just my theory. Managers, especially middle managers, rather than hiring to maximize the upside, really hire and interview to minimize risk. Okay? If you buy that, and I think that's just is. I've interviewed enough and been in corporations long enough to know that the average middle manager is doing that. So if I'm the average white American, average, not everybody, and given my experience of what I see in the media, and I see you come in the door, my risk meter goes up subconsciously. You know, I don't weigh in bed thinking about I'm not gonna. It just goes up, and if you can, every now and then you'll watch when you walk in the room to something, and somebody thought you were white when they see you, and they, you know how that looks. So you've been in that room too. So what I believe, what I try to tell companies and organizations, look, that doesn't make you a bad company or a bad person. That just an is. And if you don't tease that out, if you don't confront that and tease it out, you'll have a problem. And you have to tease it out. And I give a couple examples. One is, if I met you and you're a white guy and you got a terrible southern drawl, I have to manage myself because my initial reaction, uh-oh. Or if you've done international business, the mistake that Americans make often is they attach how well you speak English to how smart that person is. And I remind them, I put you in Japan, Mr. American. Let's see how smart you are in Japan trying to deal. And so we all have biases and prejudice. The question is, can you confront them? And the way to confront them is look at the numbers. You just look at the numbers, and if your selection rate for women is lower than percentage for men, or blacks lower than whites, that should tell you somewhere to look. And then try to tease it out. But I think that's what's going on. And these small companies, the advantage is they have lots of opportunities. The disadvantage is they're in a hurry, you know. And so I just want to contact the 3 guys who went to Stanford with me, and who do you know? And they know 2 other people went to Stanford. I had this funny meeting with recently, and you'll appreciate this. 3 guys from New York, from the East Coast, big-time private equity firm, coming in and presenting us on why we should take money for them. All 3 guys had black suits on, okay, white shirts, no tie, because they're in Silicon Valley. All right? All right, okay. All right. And then and I always ask in meetings, I want to know who I'm talking to, so give me a little bit about your background. Boo, 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 Harvard Law. Boo, 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 Harvard Law. Boo, 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 Harvard Law. They were when they realized that, it was so much sameness for these 3 guys that they were embarrassed, okay? Because this firm is hiring, they know what they like, they know what these Harvard law guys look like, and they're interested in Harvard law guys because that's what their risk meter is low when they see white, well-dressed Harvard law person. And that's the issue we have to tease out, is this subconscious prejudice that hurt. And then I make this business case. I say, look, the number 1 issue in this valley is talent, and you can't afford to exclude any place for talent, number 1. And number 2 is this whole idea that all these studies about if you attack problems with multiple points of view, you just do a better job. And clearly, growing up black in America is different than growing up in white, and you just attack issues differently. I mean, it's just, you do. And so I just think there's a true business case for diversity. And then I'll leave you, and what we believe at Andreessen Horowitz is a good idea that most people think is a bad idea, but really it's a good idea. You'll make a lot of money. And I think the most innovative subculture in America is Black Americans. And that's a good idea if you can figure out how to turn that energy and smarts and creativity into business opportunities legitimate. There's a lot of money to be made. And I think for those in the room and all of us, I think there's an opportunity, not because of a deficit problem, it's an opportunity problem to create wealth. And the subculture that I've seen do it in the last 2 decades here is the East Indians. 20 years ago, there were very few East Indian entrepreneurs. Today, the amount of wealth that's been generated with that subculture is phenomenal. And just by hard work and working together and supporting each other, et cetera. And I marvel at it. And I think that creates us a model that we can have as a culture.
Great, thank you. Do we have time for one question, or I don't know if there is? I mean, some great information there. Sure, Mike.
Yeah, so my question is, I think all of us want to support entrepreneurs and people who want to create startups, but sometimes it's hard to know where we should put our focus. And I guess the question that I have is, do you think it makes more sense to be focusing on the people who are out here already talented, but who are in big companies, maybe not making the choice to be entrepreneurs? Or do you think it makes more sense to talk to the people who oftentimes slightly less talented, but who are making the choice to do startup and who could never really even work in a big company, they would never want to?
Yeah.
So do you think we should be choosing for that entrepreneur spirit and we can teach them the skills, or do you think we should be choosing for the raw skills and we can teach them the entrepreneur spirit?
Yes. As the tyranny or the R for me, I'm looking for the person, the idea, the ability, critical thinking, to drive and smarts. Either one work I've seen, with plenty of examples here in the Valley of both models working. I don't think there's a right model. I think it depends on the person and the idea.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. Thank you very much.